welcome back to Inside Art.
I'm Kat.
I'm Alicia.
And insert Pokemon video.
Yeah, we're doing Pokemon as people too. Again, we've actually already done this video before.
I haven't got to do a Pokemon video yet, so I'm excited.
At any Pokemon video at all.
Zero on here.
Because we do so many Pokemon videos on this channel.
There's an Ash back here that's got some input going on as well.
Yeah, we brought our own Ash today.
Maybe later he can, with his Ash skills, pick which of our Pokemon he chooses.
He can choose a Pokemon to use in battle. That's why we brought him today.
He can choose a human sacrifice. Is that?
Oh, God. He's a bit young for that, isn't he? So last video I did Score Bunny and Psyduck. The duck that's like holding the leek.
No, that's not Psyduck, that's Farfetch.
Oh, the Farfetch, sorry.
See, I know my 151, but I don't know what the other words you were saying after
I'm so embarrassed. People are gonna roast me in the comments. I've already gotten a request from one of the people in the studio. Dave actually wanted one of us to do Gardevoir. Because apparently that's a very popular Pokemon.
I really want to do NineTails because NineTails has always been my favourite, and I feel like NineTails gets like zero love. Vulpix, which is like the first evolution of it, gets lots of love, but yeah, NineTails does not.
Let's start with those two, I reckon, and then we'll see how we go.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Ash is excited too.
Ash is excited. So I started initially with an idea of like, I know that NineTails is based on Kitsune, which is like, for lack of a better term, like a Japanese wolf ghost or spirit. So my brain kind of went to like ghosty vibes, like graveyard vibes.
Yeah, is it a ghost Pokemon?
It's not, but they can learn ghost moves.
That's pretty fitting,
I
think.
Yeah. I was sort of playing around with all the brushes, trying to work out what would give me the texture that I wanted for the background and the sort of glowy effect. I sort of decided to stick with the fog brush in the Jazza pack.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of obsessed with it because it gives me like
It's one of my favourites too.
Yeah.
How good is it?
It's so good. Played around with that for a bit and then decided that I needed to actually get started on the Pokemon.
Yeah. Always the hardest part.
Yeah, I was having too much fun. So I started out with a silhouette for this one, knowing that I wasn't going to be showing actually a lot of her and wanted to get my silhouette right. And then I was sort of trying to work out how I'm going to do these NineTails that NineTails is known for.
Right, because humans don't have any tails, let alone 9 of them.
So I wanted to stick with kind of the Japanese theme and went for like a semi-kimono type thing where the sort of dress part of it is split into 9 sections.
I did that for my character too.
Oh, did you?
I won't spoil it just yet because you guys will see next up, but that's what I did as well.
Okay, great minds think alike.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where I went with that one. I didn't want to be too obvious with it. I just sort of wanted it to be a subtle nod. And then I remembered that NineTails also has this little like crest on its head and went with kind of like a spiky, cresty geisha hair to call back to that as well. And so once I had that down, I refined it to be a little bit more readable as like that shape only. And next I wanted to add my light source. So I added a little flame in her hands. Now I know we're supposed to have people, but like maybe
they can be magical people. That's fine.
Maybe she's a bit magical. So I really like having my light source available for my brain to sort of see where it would cast light.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
So I spent a lot of the time just having a really, really good time just lighting up her face and that sort of area of her body. And I think my favorite bit was putting the light from behind through the fabric so you could still see the silhouette of her body.
Yeah, I love that. I love how bright and vivid the orange is and how it's like a total complementary colour to your background. Is that something that you planned?
That was intentional, yes.
Of course.
Because I knew she was going to have that sort of like orangey red flame, and I guess it worked out anyway as something you would have in like a sort of like spooky graveyard theme.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely intentional.
Super moody.
Just to finish it off, like to sort of place her in a space, I didn't want to do an actual Japanese graveyard because I didn't want to be disrespectful. So their gravestones tend to be sort of upright columns. So I thought the lanterns are similar shape to what they would have in a shrine anyway, but I sort of thought that would sort of harken back as well to that sort of theme.
Yeah.
And I couldn't resist adding little Pokeball shapes to the lanterns.
I see what you did there, of course.
And then just to finish it off, I wanted to add some trees and leaf sort of shapes along the ground and stuff as well.
They really nicely like vignette the character in the middle.
I love bordering artworks of trees.
Oh,
I don't know
how good
why.
is it? It's like a hack. It just
is.
makes your art like 10 times better.
It's so fun too. It's just like really, again, satisfying. You sort of put them in, you're like, yes.
I see. We do actually have a lot of tree brushes in the brush pack.
I'm gonna
With like
play with them.
leaves and branches. Yeah, but I see you went with like a
Dots.
dots. Yeah, no, it makes it feel really cohesive. Sometimes having brushes that do all the work for you, it's very convenient, but sometimes it just doesn't match your style.
When it's bordering an artwork, you don't want it to be too noticeable. So having it less detailed draws your eye to the center rather than to the leaves.
Yeah, of course. Kind of like a depth of field.
Depth of field, that's it. Well, that's like too, I made sure to blur things as they went further back as well. And
Yeah.
you fade things as they go back so they disappear into like the spooky fog and all that.
Yeah.
And it's all that depth of field
I think
type
it looks
stuff.
amazing. I love it. Those
Thank
are like
you.
my two favorite colours
Yeah,
to
me
use
too.
in art as well.
It's so fun. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. And I think like the thing I love about what we do here is that I've become way more painterly, and I think that's absolutely to my advantage.
Yeah. So for my gardevoir, I know I really wanted to give Disney princess vibes. I think there's just something about her dress and her hair and her pose that feels really elegant and whimsical and very princessy.
I totally see it.
So I knew I wanted to keep the same pose that she has with the floating arms, as they call it. Here you can see I did the same thing with your dress. I kind of split it up, basically following the first reference on the left there. So while I did want to give it medieval Disney sort of vibes, I did kind of want the dress to look very modern as well. So instead of having like big poofs and lace and things like that, lots of bows and stuff, I kind of wanted to look like just falling fabric or petals. And then she felt a little bit unbalanced, so I did add her feet just peeking out there as well.
I love the feet peeking out because then you can, even once you shade it in, it's maybe not as obvious that that's a split in her dress.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, it was kind of just looking like stripes or something.
Yeah.
So I think having that really helped make it feel more like segmented. Now, Gardevoir has got this like really interesting face design. She's sort of got these spikes coming out of her face, and I didn't know what to do with those. I kept sort of thinking about those like masquerade masks that have like all the feathers sort of and like sequins sticking out of them. So I decided maybe she just like, again, being like a modern princess, maybe she's just really good at doing makeup and she just like put some feathers or some wings or something on her cheeks.
That's awesome. I love that idea. Gotta say, I love the facial expression you've given her.
Thanks. She's kind of got these like really big eyes, and they kind of look curious but also like a little bit scared. I don't know. So I did give her like these ridiculously large eyes and really tiny little eyebrows because you don't really see hers in the Pokemon
true.
art. Line work, I really wasn't sure which brush I wanted to use. I started off with one of the ink brushes and it just wasn't feeling right. I wasn't really feeling it today, so I went back to a firm pencil brush. So it still had a little bit of grit, but that's just something that I like to do. And I feel like when I use like really smooth ink brushes, it feels more cartoony than I want it to be.
Yeah,
So I like to pick something with a bit of grit.
I'm the same.
For her dress, I actually wanted to give her a little bit of coverage. Just something about like the long dress and the gloves and the high neck. I don't know, it felt very cool girl, I think. And I felt like it reflected the original design
Yeah, I really like it.
more accurately.
Yeah.
So for the shading, white is such a difficult color to shade because like, what do you shade with white? Like gray? It always looks so stony and dull when you use a gray color. So I decided to take a look at the original Pokemon art and I realized I used like this really subtle purpley sort of gray, like a lilac color for shading. So I used that with a multiply layer to sort of get those really nice shadows, and I think it really brings a lot of life to the color white.
I love how you've used it there, and I like that it's like purple and sort of lilacs are complementary to the green as well.
Yeah, it's still got that like pastel sort of feel.
Yeah.
Probably my biggest tip that helped my art process the most is to always try and pick a colour when I'm like shading. Even if it doesn't feel right, even if grey seems to make so much sense, just adding a colour instead of plain old grey brings a lot of life to your artwork. And then of course, just some highlights to give it like a slightly silky sort of texture. It was looking a bit matte, which it could have been if I really wanted it to, but I thought just adding a little bit of shine made her look a bit cooler. I don't know.
Very Disney princess too.
Yeah, thanks. So assuming Gardevoir is a grass type Pokemon, I just added some like petals and flowers and gardeny sort of things behind her, just as a little flourish at the end. She was looking a bit plain, just standing on a white background.
I like that you've made it the pink too, just so it sort of like all connects in.
Yeah, it keeps the colour palette going. So that is the first round done. We've done our first 2 Pokemon. How are we feeling?
I'm pretty happy.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
The real question is, Ash, what do you think about our Pokemon?
What do you think? Yeah?
That's a yes. That's a resounding yes. Now, speaking of Gardevoir, Gardevoir is actually also in our Patreon commission that we are doing. And I have fused her with Peach, Princess Peach from Mario. We're drawing Peachovar at the moment, and that was by request of one of our lovely master patrons, Time Blink.
I love that idea, and I love how the whole commission's coming out too. Like, it's so cool.
The commission also has a Bowser and Blastoise combination fusion as well.
Yeah, it's such a fun idea, getting to like collaborate with our master patrons as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's something you guys are interested in being involved in the future, maybe a future commission, definitely check out our Patreon. We've got the links down below in the description.
Yes.
And there's multi-tiers.
But only our masters get to give us input on the commission. So if you want to be involved in the commission, you have to become a master. If you're not ready to commit to being a master, that is absolutely fine as well. We've also got our diver tier, who get a verbal shout out from us.
I guess we'll get back to
Back
some
to
Pokemon
it.
fan art, hey?
But I'm not sure which Pokemon I want to do next, so I think I'm going to get the help of a random Pokemon generator.
Sounds good. Considering I know like a smidgen of Pokemons.
And me even fewer.
Yeah.
So,
So we're gonna get some help.
yeah. All right, Kat, do the honors. Drum roll, please.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I don't know what it is, but it's cool.
Manectric.
It looks like a spiky Egyptian wolf.
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh, that's
I got a bear
cool.
Pokemon. Ursaring.
That's cool. All right, well, I'm excited to try these new Pokemon that neither of us have any idea.
Let's get started.
Let's get on it. So I really struggled trying to work out what I wanted to do for this one. Initially, like the sort of head shape made me think of like a pharaoh sort of Egyptian type hat thing, and then like the blue and the sort of goldy yellow colour also tie into that.
Definitely got those Egyptian colours going.
So I had a picture in my head and I couldn't quite think what I was referencing, and then I remembered it was probably Night at the Museum.
Yes, Rami Malek. What's his character? Pharaoh Arkman Ra.
Yeah.
I just googled it.
So I pulled up some reference pictures of him. So I looked up the Egyptian god of thunder, which was Baal, and he has a similar sort of headdress and skirt situation going on.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty common in ancient Egypt.
So I felt pretty vindicated, I guess, in the shapes that I was already sort of thinking about making and like attaching it to this sort of like Egyptian person.
Yeah.
So then I went ahead and sort of did some sketching. I still wasn't really feeling exactly where I wanted to go with it. So I treated it more like a character design rather than like a sort of spatial atmospheric artwork.
Right, okay.
So I did a lot of thinking about how I wanted to pose him. And in the end I decided I didn't want to do anything too fancy if we're sort of thinking about it as like a costume design challenge almost.
Right, okay.
So I wanted to keep my lines sketchy, go in, try and add elements both from the Pokemon and from the Pharaoh idea. And once I'd done that, I sort of felt like I did need to sort of place him in somewhere. And I wanted to put him in more of like a wheat field rather than just desert.
Right, is there a reason for the weed?
I'm not sure. I just kind of like got the feeling that, you know, he's just wandering through, dragging his hands through it, having a think about something. You know, you can smell the rain coming, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Maybe a rainy day is the best day to go to a desert.
That's true, that's true.
Otherwise so dry.
And I thought I'd just add some little tiny pyramids. Some little tiny pyramids in the background just to hone in on that aspect, and some lightning in the background.
Like you said, some little tiny pyramids when they're actually like gigantic and they're just in the distance.
Objects in this artwork may be closer than they appear.
The perspective is all whack then.
And yeah, obviously I needed to add some lightning, and then I decided just to go in and add just a little bit of shadowing to stop it being so flat.
Yeah.
And some backlighting, just like rim lighting, just to sort of bring him off of the background a little bit.
Yeah.
And tried to obviously keep everything within the same colours as the Pokemon.
I really like how you incorporated spikes into his design, because the Pokemon is so spiky.
Yeah.
So you've got it like in his hat and on his hips, but also like on his wrists, like as bracelets or gloves or something.
Yes. So on the actual Pokemon, that's sort of where some of the spikes are sitting. So I was trying to work out a way of keeping them there.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy that the background is sort of the same colours as his character.
Yeah.
It
Funny
was
how that
totally
worked out.
unintentional, honestly. But that's just like back of your mind colour theory, I guess.
It's this really nice gradient from yellow to blue as well. Like it doesn't feel super sharp, like where the horizon is. It kind of looks a little bit dusty almost or something.
It's the sand picking up.
Yeah, maybe it's the pollen or something.
Yeah.
It looks really cool.
I used the fog brush again
Ah,
on that.
everyone's favourite.
Yep.
Now is probably a good time to let you guys know that if you're wondering what brushes we're using today, we're using Jazz's Ultimate Digital Brush Pack. We've got the link in the description if you guys are interested. So for my last artwork, I got Ursa Ring. Within my Googling, I discovered that Ursa Ring, shockingly, has a lot of bear traits. So they are really super protective of their children. They hibernate and they love to eat food, and they get really angry when they're hungry. So the vision that I had in my head was like a big grizzly dad with a dad bod who has just spent the whole day dealing with the kids and is now just really grumpy and hungry and just wants to eat his dinner. So I knew I kind of wanted something a little bit more stylistic and comic to sort of keep that ode to the original Pokemon art. So I think going a little bit less realistic is something that I kind of feel like I struggle with a bit, but one tip that I've found that really helps me is to keep everything really balanced. So rather than making everything big and everything small, it's good to have big, medium and small shapes throughout your character. So I knew I wanted to have a big belly, thick legs, thick forearms. While I did include all of those things, I sort of counteracted all that chunkiness with skinnier shoulders and biceps and a smaller head.
In your shapes, you've made it very like straight lined, sort of very gestural.
Yeah, so compared to Gardevoir, which I did in the previous artwork, I kept her lines really soft and round and floaty basically, and that sort of really complemented her character. But for this character, I did kind of want to go blockier and sharper, and one thing that you learn in design school is that having square shapes really helps your character feel really sturdy.
Yes.
So I tried to add as many hard angles as I could. It's fine.
That works.
And because I wanted to draw this character hungry, obviously I gave him a knife and fork. But later I realized it was kind of a happy accident because it allowed me to include that silvery claw color that's on the original
of course.
Pokemon.
Yeah.
And that was entirely unintentional.
That's awesome. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, just making sure that I included really thick eyebrows to sort of give him that hairy kind of look. A beard, of course, because bears are hairy. Got that growl going on. Big sort of stocky nose, and for his hair I kind of wanted to keep it really square, and then hopefully that could sort of allude to like bear ears or something. I got in my sketch to like 90% and then I wasn't entirely confident with it. I think some areas just looked a little bit wrong to me, but I couldn't put my finger on it, so I decided to make a perspective grid, and something as simple as a bunch of lines that are sort of converging to a point can really make you see where things aren't aligned. So I could see that my left hand was a little bit off, and my right foot I felt like didn't really line up with the perspective lines of everything else.
That's really clever. I've never actually done that before, so I think I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, usually when you think of perspective, you think of environments or architecture, but you can really use perspective with characters, and it's a huge help. In my refine line work stage, I like to focus more on making everything a little bit more detailed, obviously. Having a few squiggly lines where the fabric would naturally fold makes it feel like it is actually fabric and it's not just skin tight, you know? So sort of around his waist area and also in his pants as well. Even just having some straight lines in the middle of his chest kind of allude to folds and fabric, and I think that really helps. I kind of struggled with the colour palette for this one. He's just so brown, and I knew I wanted him to be a tanned character to sort of make him look brown as well, like his skin is brown, but also having brown clothes and brown shoes and brown hair, it just felt like a little bit too much. So you can see I sort of try and change them up a little bit, make some of them a little bit more red and lighter, like the shorts, and make the hair on his head a little bit darker, and just sort of come to a nice balance. I think having the darkest areas around his head really draws your eyes to it because there's the most amount of contrast, especially with having a white background and a white bib, I guess.
I like that you've sort of gone through a few iterations of what the bib might look like, and having it there around his head breaks it up a bit.
Yeah.
And draws your eye to his face.
And then I sort of decided that it was looking a bit grey. Having brown as the base colour, which is very orange, and then a blue shadow layer that you can see in my layers panel, they kind of just cancelled each other out and became grey, and I wasn't entirely happy with it, so I ended up changing the shadow colour to something a bit more warm, and I think that sort of helped him look more brown and more like the original Pokemon. Yeah, so this is my character. He's just a grumpy old grizzly dad who loves his kids to pieces, but maybe they just pushed him a little bit too far today.
They stole his dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I like that. Let us know what you think in the comments, but more importantly, I think we should see what Ash thinks.
All right, Ash. What do you reckon? NineTails?
NineTails? No. Gardevoir?
Nada.
Ash is very unimpressed with our
Clearly,
artworks today.
we need to redo the video.
I think we do.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Ash.
Thank you for judging. We couldn't have done it without you.
And thank you guys for joining us.
Let us know which ones you like in the comments. Let us know which Pokemon we should do next in the comments.
Yeah.
I've got a few ideas. I'm sure the others do too.
Or we can go the other way.
Human characters into Pokemon, okay. Let us know what you'd like to see.
Hi. Well, until next time.
Until next time.
Inside out. Inside out.
Inside out.
Bye.
A lot of coverage.
Ah.